those that have passed and pay our respects to the victims senselessly lost by these crimes. Once again, welcome to the 13 days of Halloween, and let's jump into the video. Hello everybody, welcome to the 5th video of the 13 days of Halloween. Today we will be talking about another Halloween-inspired case. This one has some similarities as to one of the cases that I have covered so far on the channel for the 13 days of Halloween, but there are definitely differences as well, so I wanted to still cover it. Today we will be talking about the murder of Chelsea Bruck, who attended a legendary Halloween party and vanished. Chelsea Ellen Bruck spent her last evening on Earth dressed like the fictitious comic book character Poison Ivy. But that same night, she would encounter an actual villain as she walked home once the party she was attending had ended. Chelsea was the youngest of 5 children. At the time of her death, she was working as a server for a local restaurant in Frenchtown Township, Michigan. This job very much suited Chelsea because she had a passion for baking, which she hoped to pursue further by getting a culinary degree and becoming a chef. The date was October 25th of 2014, at which time Chelsea was 22 years old. She was having a great time at a massive costume party held annually by Mike Williams and his band called Pickaxe Preacher. Mike Williams had held this semi-regular event since high school, and hundreds of people attended every year. Chelsea had made the Poison Ivy costume she would wear to the event. It consisted of black leggings and a top that she had sewn leaves onto. She topped off the outfit with a dark wig covering her blonde hair, and this character was a stark contrast to the relatively quiet and subdued Chelsea, which is perfect for Halloween, right? Like, people like to dress up as their alter ego or what have you. Reportedly, Chelsea was in high spirits when she arrived at this legendary Halloween party. The party was held outdoors at a large property in the countryside. Chelsea's friends would report that she was laughing and dancing until around 3 a.m. with her friends when the crowd at the party began to thin out, and she too decided it was time for her to go home. Many of her friends had offered her a ride home, but for whatever reason, she would turn her friends' offers down. Tragically, Chelsea would never make happen for her immediately. The entire community, many of whom knew Chelsea personally, joined in on the efforts to locate her. Volunteers posted missing flyers everywhere and handed out thousands of leaflets. A $17,000 reward was posted for any details about her whereabouts. This amount would later increase to a reward of $30,000 after donations poured in from the community. Her parents made a public plea for Chelsea to be returned safely to them. As you can imagine, detectives questioned everyone who attended the Halloween party in hopes that one of them might shed some light on what had happened to Chelsea. Remember, this party was massive, so it took detectives some time to comb through and go through all of these people for interviews to try to get some information. Some of the party attendees told investigators that they saw Chelsea leave with a man they did not recognize. But even with this piece of information, there was not really any significant advances made in the case. Chelsea's favorite color was purple, so a purple ribbon campaign began in the community. For more than 5 months after Chelsea disappeared, everyone wore purple ribbons to work, school, and beyond to remind those around them that she had still not been found and that they could not let this be forgotten. But everyone this time pretty much knew that it was unlikely that Chelsea would be found alive, although many people didn't want to say those words publicly. It would be 6 months before the police made any real progress in her case. On April 24th of 2015, Chelsea's shirt and leggings were uncovered at a construction site, and they were ripped and torn. Workers at the property came across the items while moving dirt in preparation for new construction. However, the discovery did not stop at just her clothing. They would also find the naked remains of a woman. These remains would be discovered in a wooded lot on Briar Hill Road in Ash Township, which was about 15 miles away from where the party was. Once this discovery had been made, this construction crew immediately notified the authorities, and the police instantly came to the scene. Because it had been so long since Chelsea had gone missing, and so long since her body had been kind of exposed to the elements, you could say, it wasn't immediately understood that this was Chelsea. Of course, people, had gut feelings and assumed that it was Chelsea's body, but you could not identify her at that point just by looking at her remains. And so the forensic examiner had to utilize dental records, which we know is very common, to determine that this was in fact Chelsea. A post-mortem exam showed that Chelsea's cause of death was blunt force trauma. She had multiple facial fractures, and chipped teeth indicated the level of violence that had befallen Chelsea. So at this point, there is success in the sense that Chelsea was finally found, but it was devastating to Chelsea's friends and family and the community that she was not found alive. And so this investigation now was no longer a disappearance case, but now it was a homicide. Male DNA was collected from the leggings found, but police were not successful in matching it to anyone in their database to implicate Chelsea's killer. It wouldn't be until 2016 that detectives made further progress in this case. A 27-year-old man by the name of Daniel Clay had been arrested for a home invasion and sexual assault. And because he had been arrested, police required that he submit a sample of his DNA. And at this time, they had no, inclination that Daniel was connected to Chelsea's murder. These were two completely separate incidents. The home invasion and sexual assault, was not necessarily super violent or, as we know, didn't turn into a murder. So Daniel wasn't a suspect in that sense, but when they obtained his DNA and the lab results came back, police determined that it was a positive match for the DNA left behind on Chelsea's leggings. So the police finally have a suspect. Daniel Clay at that time did have a reasonably lengthy criminal history of burglary, drug possession, and unlawful entry. But that was not all. Daniel Clay had been seen at the same Halloween party as Chelsea on the night of her disappearance. When Daniel was initially interviewed by detectives, he denied any knowledge of Chelsea's disappearance or death. But this time around, after being pressed, he finally admitted that he had caused her death, but claimed it was accidental. Daniel said that when he left the party that night, he saw Chelsea walking along the road and stopped to offer to give her a ride home. According to Daniel, she had accepted his offer and got into his vehicle. Daniel made the claim that he and Chelsea had talked about and agreed to have sex, but she asked him to strangle her during their intercourse. He claimed that he did in fact strangle her, but it was only for 30 seconds or less, and that she had unexpectedly stopped breathing. According to Daniel's account, he then attempted to perform CPR, but was unsuccessful and not able to revive Chelsea. Now, given that he had a dead woman's body in in his possession, he, quote, freaked out about what had happened and just kept driving around. Almost an hour would go by when he finally parked near a rail bed and would tell police that he transported Chelsea's dead body from the vehicle to the nearby woods and hid her body beneath some brush. Now, before I go further into the story, I just want to say this. In the event Daniel's story was true, that this was a consensual sexual exchange gone wrong, why would you not call the police? To me, that does not make sense. If you're really not guilty, why not call? And I'm not saying that it wouldn't be scary to do that or hard to make that call. I understand fear, but I think it would be a million times worse to not call the police and to just dump a body. That's just my opinion, and I don't believe his story and account of her murder for a second, but I am just saying, what a dummy for not calling the police if that is what he wanted his story to be. But as you know, as I know, his story was a blatant lie, because remember, the medical examiner had already determined that Chelsea died from blunt force trauma to the head, and there was never any indication of strangulation and asphyxiation. So Mr. Daniel's story here does not line up, and it certainly does not match with the evidence that the medical examiner found. So I feel like he screwed himself over, because he admits to having, quote unquote, consensual sex with her. So he very much places himself with her. He admits to, giving her a ride in the car, which we don't really know if that was true or not. Like, if she was agreeable to getting in his car, which in my mind doesn't make sense, because if she wasn't willing to get in her friend's car, why would she get in the car with a stranger? That's just my thought process. So my thought is, he overpowered her somehow and got her in the car. And again, what doesn't make sense to me is he has already set himself up with the police that he has had sex with her, and so he's put himself at the scene of the crime. Basically, he has tied himself to this. What was he thinking, that they wouldn't know that she suffered blunt force trauma? What made him think that he could get away with the strangulation lie? That part, I don't know, I can't comprehend that part. In addition, though, to this lie and how this does not align with what the medical examiner has determined, her leggings had been ripped open along the seams between the legs, and one of the top's straps was broken. These details don't support a consensual sexual act in general. Yes, rough sex can be consensual, but in general, especially in a police investigation where we are now looking at a homicide, these were major red flags. And with that information and his partial admission and putting himself at the scene to an extent, the police continued to contend that Chelsea's demise was nothing more than a horrible accident. In his version of the story, he had just been trying to get her home safely when they decided to have sex, and it ended in tragedy, but according to him was not intentional. He claimed that he cried as he disposed of her body in the woods and felt tremendously guilty about what had transpired. But again, like I mentioned earlier, if this was just an accident, why didn't he call the police? And this was something that the police took note of as well. Daniel had not come forward or attempted to give Chelsea's family any peace during the months that they had searched for their daughter, the time that they went for this purple ribbon campaign. He just sat in silence, and that doesn't sound like the actions of somebody that feels guilty and truly found himself in an accidental situation. And in addition to that, all of those months that Chelsea's body had not been found, her mother had held on to the slightest shreds of hope that Chelsea may still be out there alive. And most notably in this discrepancy, Daniel wasn't able to explain the most obvious evidence against his claims that Chelsea's killer had battered her to death. Prosecutor Michael Roerig's account of the events made far more sense. In his version of what transpired in the early morning hours of October 26, 2014, the prosecutor said that Calais had spotted a young woman walking alongside the road with her costume wig in hand. Calais must have stopped and either talked Chelsea into accepting a ride or forced his intended victim into his vehicle. Then he would sexually assault and violently take her life. And afterward, he would hide his crime. When police finally caught him, he continued to deny his involvement in Chelsea's death until he couldn't. It was only when he saw no possibility of escape from the hard truth that he was responsible for her death that he admitted it. The prosecution pointed out that he then attempted to repaint the narrative of what transpired simply to lessen his guilt. Jessica Bridle, one of Chelsea's co-workers, who also attended the party that night, and who has a child with Daniel Calais, said that she remembered Daniel coming up to a group that both she and Chelsea were a part of, but that she doesn't recall what conversation had taken place. Jessica shared that she had smoked marijuana with Daniel later that night, and that the last time she had remembered seeing Chelsea was between 1 and 1:30 a.m. During the months after the party, Jessica said that Daniel never mentioned Chelsea. However, on the day the police arrested Calais, he called her twice police while she was at work and left voicemails saying that he was sorry and that he had messed up big time and that he was going to be gone for a really, really long time. Daniel's interrogation, which lasted for hours, was also played so that the jury could make their own decision. And that they did. On May 16th of 2017, they found Daniel Clay guilty of concealing a death and felony murder. On July 13th, he was sentenced as Chelsea's family looked on. Pictures of Chelsea scattered about them on easels as they spoke about how a beautiful life had been cut short and the impact her murder had on those who loved her. Daniel also spoke to the court, apologizing to Chelsea's family and acknowledging the pain he had caused them and his victim. Chelsea's mother wore the purple color that her daughter had loved so much as she awaited the sentencing verdict. Her mother gifted Daniel a new Bible to read and extended the compassion her devout Catholic faith had taught her to do to the monster who had destroyed her daughter's life by offering him forgiveness, which I am always so incredibly impressed when, family members of victims are able to do this. I recognize religiously, this is what you are taught to do, but that does not make it easy at all. But I will say, as somebody who has had to forgive people for some very, very heavy things, not murder, I'll say that, but for some very heavy things, that level of forgiveness is for your own peace and benefit. It is for your own healing and for you to move on. It is not for that person's benefit. It is for you. So I imagine there was an element of healing in that for Chelsea's mother. However, the judge overseeing the case was not as forgiving. He expressed disbelief that Daniel felt any remorse, pointing out the hours of testimony and tapes during the 10-day trial that showed how many times he, the defendant, had changed his story. Before handing down the sentence, the judge told Daniel that it was clear to him that he was a rapist, a liar, and a murderer. The judge sentenced Clay to life without parole for felony murder. He was given an additional concurrent 5-year sentence for concealing the death of an individual. His appeal of the murder conviction was denied in January of 2019. Now, the murder of Chelsea Bruck was not his only offense. Remember earlier I mentioned there was the robbery and sexual assault that initially exposed his DNA and officially connected him to Chelsea. The DNA that was submitted in that case not only revealed him as Chelsea's killer, but it also confirmed him as the man who had entered another woman's home in Monroe, Michigan, and sexually assaulted her. Because of this, police charged him with first-degree home invasion, first-degree criminal sexual conduct, and on August 29th of 2019, he received an additional sentence of 39 months in prison for that crime. He is serving his sentence at Kinross Correctional Facility in Kincello, Michigan. Chelsea's mother told the media after his sentencing, quote, "The condition of our world is not the way our Lord intended it to be. If you see something, please say something. Don't leave your friends alone. If you go somewhere, anywhere as a group, please leave with that same group." End quote. Chelsea's mom, during her victim statement, shared that she had been awakened by God with a message every night for almost a week, but when she awoke, she could never remember what God had told her. Then on May 21st of 2015, the message was clear, and she woke up and quickly wrote it down, later entitling the passage, "Choices." And this is what Choices says. "We are all given the choice between light and dark, good and evil. Our dear Lord Jesus is light and good. The devil is dark and evil." Chelsea crossed paths with someone that chose dark and evil. There are things we need to change. We have become a nation that lives in fear. We turn away and choose to ignore things we feel don't involve us. These are choices we need to change. We have to have the light outshine the dark. People don't need to endanger themselves, but if we see things that are not right or it looks questionable, please call 911. Yes, we will feel a bit foolish if we are wrong, but how are we going to feel if we were right and didn't call? You can't change woulda, coulda, shoulda. So that concludes the case of Chelsea Bruck and what happened to her when she left the legendary annual Halloween party nearby where she grew up. This is just going to be a little disclaimer, reminder for all of you listening, and similar to what Chelsea's mom said, please be mindful of your situation and your surroundings. Don't get in the car with people that you don't really know. It's really better to be safe and err on the side of caution. If it's legal where you live, carry pepper spray on you. There are really good self-defense, discreet tools that you can carry, like little pocket tasers. There's things on Amazon you can get. I keep them in my purse. I take them with me if I go on a walk, even if it's in the daytime. I have a personal alarm thing that I have hooked to my work bag that if somebody were to try and take my purse, then I would hold on to this little tab piece, and the second they pulled my purse away, a blaring alarm would go off, and the only way to stop the alarm is by putting the pin back in, or I could pull the pin if someone was attacking me to draw attention to myself. So please be aware of your surroundings. Please just be safe when you are out and about. Try to stick to the buddy system, especially if you're going to be out late when it's dark, if you're drinking, and if things happen to you when you're under the influence. That is never your fault, but please know those situations. So please be mindful and go in with a plan so that you get home safe. Let me know what you thought about this case, please, in the comments below. I will make my typical pinned comment with 3 cases I am looking to cover. You may see it pop up in the 13 days of Halloween, and if not, you will see it shortly after the 13 days of Halloween come November. Thank you, and until next time.